Hey everybody, hope you are doing well today. Thank you for joining me once again. This is Romans 13. So if this is your first time with us today, check out Romans 1 through 12 back in the Facebook feed here. We'll do 13 today. Appreciate you joining us. If you got any questions or comments as we go or after we finish, feel free to leave those in the comment section. I'll try to get back to those as best I can. And then if you could share this out with your friends list, I really appreciate it. We can increase the ability for this video to do any good by you sharing it with your friends and having other people see it. So I appreciate you being with us today. Let's go ahead and jump in. So Romans 13, and one of the reasons I go through the Bible this way is that if we just go chapter by chapter, God kind of brings out what he wants to talk about. I'm not trying to figure out what my audience might need or try to push my own agenda. This is just the next chapter in the book. So this is what we're talking about today, and it's everybody's favorite subject of politics and the authority that's over us in our daily life. Not necessarily the politics of it, but the people that we are subject to as our governing authorities, as you see in verse 1. And it just basically says, that they are in authority and that we are subject to them, and that their authority is of God, because if God hadn't ordained them to be in the place they were in, they wouldn't be in authority. And I know, at least personally, and I'm sure it is not all that uncommon, it's hard to wrap our hands around, or heads around the authorities that are in place, really at any point in history, or in our recent history, that God has ordained that to be the case. But it's right there on the page, so that's what I'm going to go with. And I mean, the tendency is to say, well, the Bible was written in a time where the authorities weren't as evil, or however you want to describe them. The times weren't so evil. But we see even in biblical times some evil kings and what they would do and how they would address issues, and that I think that's an unfounded point, just my opinion, I guess. Verse 2 points out that if we decide to resist the authorities, decide to go against the authorities, the government, whatnot, that we're resisting God and that we will incur His judgment because of it. 3 and 4 talk about basically that if you do good, the government's going to, the people in authority are going to leave you alone. I think that's generally true. I also think there are cases where that may not be the case. But especially in our current time, I mean, in the United States, we're really blessed to not have the persecution and payback, or that's probably not the word I was looking for, but to not have to worry about being jailed or killed for our beliefs. And sure, it may not be popular, and it may not get us a bunch of popularity or fame. There may be people that talk down or talk against, but in general, we're safe to be able to, just my ability to pull up my phone in the morning and say, hey, this is what God's telling me, and this is what I believe, without having any kind of censorship on that, is a religious freedom that we should be appreciative of. But anyway, verse 4 goes on to talk about if you go against the government, if you're trying to do wrong, then of course they're going to try to step in. Verse 5 talks about how we're subject to this authority, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. That, if we are going against the authorities, it should be a conscience thing for us. It should be something we feel guilty about, something that is a check in our spirit, and that should be the case. Verse 6 is everybody's favorite subject for sure. It talks about how because of this, our being subject to, and I do want to point out the verbiage here of subjection is one of volunteer subjection. So it's not that we're being forced. It's our choice to be subject to the authorities, just like it's our choice to subject ourselves to God and His authority, and that we are given that option. I just wanted to point that out real quick. But then in verse 6 it talks about because of this subjection, because we have put ourselves under this subjection, we pay taxes for the authorities and ministers of God attending to this very thing. And verse 7 goes on to say, pay all that is owed to them, taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, and honor to whom honor is owed. Basically, don't, and we'll go on to say, don't owe anyone anything. Always make sure the ledger is, the scale is tipped in their favor, and not in yours. And so, we're kind of going along this, pay your taxes thing, and then it says also pay respect to whom respect is owed, and honor to whom honor is owed. I think that also goes back to the authorities, the government, however you want to refer to them, that we're supposed to respect and honor them and their position, whether we like the fact that they're in that position or not. Verse 8, as we talked about, it says, owe no one anything except to love each other, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. So it kind of changes subject here, but it starts with just owing no one anything, and make sure that you're always that someone owes you rather than you owe someone else, and that always do that little bit more. And then it goes on to say, except to love one another, for the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. And then 9 talks about how basically all of the commandments are wrapped up into this one commandment to love one another, and that if you love someone, obviously you're not going to murder them. You're not going to murder them. You're not going to lie to them. You're not going to covet their things. You're not going to want what they have, etc. Like you're not. Basically, to love your neighbor, to love the people around you, you're not going to have to worry about breaking any of the laws, because they're set up to make sure you do that. And verse 10 talks about how love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore it's fulfilling the law. Verse 11 talks about that salvation is nearer to us now than when we first believed. It says, wake up, the hour has come. Basically, every day we get closer to Christ coming back, and every day we get closer to death, and whichever comes first, we're one day closer to that face-to-face meeting with God, and we're going to have to answer for things that we've done, and we're going to have to answer for the people we didn't tell about Christ, and we're going to have to answer for the things that we said and the times we didn't love our neighbor. And so we need to be cognizant of that and aware of that, not sleeping, not ignoring that. And then verse 12 and 13 talk about basically walking an upright life and living your life as though it's daytime and not nighttime. We all know that a lot of sin and seedy behavior is hidden in the dark. A lot of those places that you go to get into trouble are dark places. Nobody wants to be seen. Nobody wants to be recognized. And then, dark alleyways, and that, sin tends to move towards darkness and not daylight. And the Bible challenges us to bring light onto everything that we do, so that we can walk properly, that we can walk as we should. And then verse 14 kind of wraps up. It says, put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. So that word put on means to clothe yourself. From the Greek, it's enduo, And the other references for it in the Bible are literally to put on clothes, to clothe yourself, to wrap yourself in. But it says to put on the Lord Jesus Christ. And so basically wrap ourselves in Him and His love, and put Him all around us, and make no provision. And that word provision is pronoia, and it's to provide for. There's only, I think, one other reference in the Bible that uses this, but it's basically to get ready for a journey, to make forethought and to provide for. Like if you're going for a long trip, you're going to provide for all of the clothes and food that you're going to need on the trip, and that type thing. And so it says, basically wrap yourself in Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to gratify its desires. And I think this is a really good synopsis as to how to avoid falling into these behaviors. Is basically wrap yourself in Jesus Christ, surround yourself with everything about Him and everything that has to do with Him, and make no provision. Give yourself no opportunity. Take everything off the table. Take the bad habits and all of the devices that allowed you to do that. Remove those. All of the time that was spent doing that, cut that off. Find something else more productive to do with that time. But if you give yourself no opportunity, then you're not going to fall into that trap again. So it may be, it's going to be a unique lifestyle. It's going to be a radical lifestyle, because our world is all about making provisions to do these things and giving yourself the opportunity. And this is saying to do something different, to wrap yourself in God, to wrap yourself in Jesus Christ, and make no opportunity, make no chance for you to fall into that. So that's all I've got for Romans 13. See you tomorrow for Romans 14. Again, please comment, like if you're enjoying these, and share it out with your friends list so we can get a bit further reach on this. And I'll see you tomorrow with Romans 14. Thanks.